What's up, everybody? Welcome to Podcast Now. I'm Alex, and in this video, I want to talk about Black Myth Wukong and some of the newer previews that just came out earlier today. I gotta say, I made a video a few weeks ago talking about me sleeping on Metal Gear Solid 3's remake. I gotta be real, I don't think I've completely slept on Black Myth. I've long said I almost kind of feel like it's a dream that this game is coming out, and it's always looked so good. I always felt like maybe there was some sort of fakeness, if that's even a word, with the game, but I gotta say, as we're getting closer and closer, as I'm seeing more, as I'm reading more, number one, the game seems very real, and number two, the game sounds absolutely incredible. And I gotta say, in terms of sleeping on it, I gotta stop doing that, because going into the fall here, this could easily be one of the better games. We talk about Stellar Blade, I think delivering and doing a really good job at kind of being an alternative. It's somewhat Souls-like, but it kind of carves out an identity on its own. This game feels like it's going to do very much the same thing, with some similarities and some differences. So I want to kind of focus on a couple of the highlights that I personally saw. I mean, you can go out and read some of the different previews. I saw one on a German site, actually. I had to translate the whole thing to English. I think I read Video Games Chronicle, their entire preview of this game. So there's a couple out there you can read, but the game sounds just really cool. So what I gather is this was very early on in the game, and so the impressions, things are going to change as you go throughout, right? In the beginning, I think they played like an hour and a half. It's more linear. Now, the entire game, to a degree, is linear, but as you go through it, it'll open up a little bit more, but it primarily relies on still linear paths, and if you deviate, you go off the beaten path, you'll find sometimes rewards. You'll find alternate routes to get from one place to the next. Maybe you'll bypass enemies entirely. Maybe you'll find chests that give you things, right? So there's a little bit of exploration, and Stellar Blade was definitely more open than that, but that sense of exploration reminds me, what we just played, a few months ago with Stellar Blade. Another big difference that I kept seeing, in these previews is the way they space out and just the cadence, I guess, right, of the enemies in general. It was either a rumor or they said it out loud at some point. This was another one of those things where it's like, I don't know if I believe you. I remember seeing something that said how there was like 100+ bosses. Maybe you guys saw it too. A ridiculous number of bosses in this game. And I remember seeing it, and I remember maybe even I tweeted it saying, no way. Like, I just don't believe that. There's no way there's like over 100. You think about Elden Ring, how many bosses, and they could be side things, right? They could be bosses you completely skip over. But you think about how intricately, designed. You go back to Stellar Blade just a few months ago. You go to Elden Ring, I guess, right now, right, with Shadow of the Erdtree, or just Elden Ring in general. Bosses are hard. Games can have a bunch of them, but normally not that much. Honestly, from this preview, I think I was the liar. I think I was the one that I probably shouldn't have not believed them, right? In the, I think, hour and a half people were able to play, I think they said there was around 6 or so bosses in that time. It was around, and they broke it down. You could do the average yourself. It was about a boss every 10 to 15 minutes. But what I did find interesting, again, what's the difference, right? And I did see people questioning this as well in terms of maybe this works, maybe it doesn't work. The game actually doesn't have too many just enemies laying out, or just out there in the world, right? A big part of that exploration and just kind of facing off against the world, when you think of the Bloodborns, you think about the Elden Rings, or even think about the Stellar Blades, right, of the world, is, you go from boss to boss. The bosses have to be detailed. They have to be different. They have to, bring a pretty substantial challenge to you. But these individual enemies along the way, they can be diverse. They can put up a real fight, and sometimes they can be more difficult. People are seeing that with Elden Ring now, right? They kind of ramped up the difficulty. Average enemies are kicking people's butt, right? Sometimes that happens, sometimes it doesn't. So far, what people are able to play in this game is, there's actually not that many of them. They sound difficult. They sound varied. They sound challenging. They sound like there's something that's going to put up a fight when you do face them, but it's not so much about, you have to go through 10, 15 minutes of hardcore facing off against 10 or 15 enemies in those 10, 15 minutes. No, maybe it's 1 or 2. You face off against them, and then you sandwich that in between boss number 1 and boss number 2. So I found that really interesting, and that's what, the people writing these previews, I saw them kind of, not debating. They were kind of debating against themselves, but you see several people saying playing it, is that going to work? Because a lot of these games, again, it's more about, it is bosses, but it's also battling against the world, right? The exploration and what you find, and maybe you get yourself caught up. I remember, a couple months ago in Stellar Blade, you can get yourself caught up in several enemies before boss 1 or after boss 1, but before boss 2. And this, it doesn't seem like it's like that, at least right now. I saw a lot of positivity with the visuals. Notice that's like one of the later things we're talking about in this video, because a game like this is obviously going to live or die in the gameplay. Gameplay sounds like it's incredibly solid, incredibly smooth, but then they talk a little bit more about, the realism of it, right, and how good it looks. And I think the game was originally designed in Unreal Engine 4. They switched it to 5 back in 2021. They liked it, and from the people that were able to play it so far, they said you could see, the improvements, textures, and there was a boss that had, and I was very happy to hear this, there's a boss that you face where you sometimes go like ankle or knee deep, like with water, so the water will kind of react to your movements and the boss's I have to, I have to talk about it, and, I love hearing things like that. But no, I mean, the general just takeaway is that the game sounds incredible. It really does. It sounds, are there going to be things that are similar? Sure, there's their version of campfires. You know what I mean? There's the bosses. There's parrying. There's dodging. They actually kind of mentioned perfect parrying and perfect dodging, which I think of when I think of Stellar Blade. But this one's a little bit different. This one, you really wait until the last second. It's all about the last second. You'll actually almost create a clone of yourself that the enemy will attack, and it'll give you a couple seconds to be able to attack the enemy. Every preview I saw talked about the game. Well, one of them flat out said the game pushes like aggressiveness. It wants you to be on the attack, not on the defense. Then I saw another one also mention that word aggressive, right? The game wants it to be fast. It wants you to be fast. So, it depends on what's from Soft or Soulsborne type thing you're talking about. But generally, I mean, it changes, from one to the next. I think this one sounds really exciting. Will look different. Right? It's going to look the part. It's going to feel the part. It's going to feel similar in some ways, but it's also going to be unique. It's going to focus, I think, a little bit more attack heavy, quicker maybe than some of the other games that we've seen so far. It might look better, not that the visuals, but it might look better just because of the technology, right? But the pacing and the way they're going to handle enemies and bosses and how you space those out, that's going to be interesting. So hopefully you can tell, like I'm easily the most invested, and I hope that, shows through in the video, that I've ever been, in this game. Game comes out in, like a month and a half. It's going to kick off the fall, period, and I really think this game stands a chance of being extremely good. I thought the game could be good, but again, I'll just circle back to this weird feeling where it's like I never felt that I heard or saw enough to almost believe that this game was going to be like a 20-25 hour game. It always felt more like a tech demo where there was like an idea, but it was never like fulfilled. You know what I mean? That's how it always kind of felt to me. And as, the days and weeks, I've seen other previews. I think there was previews a few weeks ago as well in this game. This is the first one I looked at really deep, and I'm glad I did, because the game just sounds, it really does. I feel like this can be a game of the year contender if everything kind of comes together. So let me know what you guys think in the comments. Make sure you're subscribed to the channel, bell icon turned on. I hope to see you all on the next one.